fashion designer Tommy Hilfiger, but you might also know Allie Hilfiger from her 2003 MTV reality show, Rich Girls.
Soon after that show ended, Allie found herself physically and mentally debilitated by a disease that she said made her crazy. And after years of going from doctor to doctor to doctor, Allie was finally diagnosed with Lyme disease.
Yeah, Allie's written all about her struggles. It's a new book with a great title. It's called Bite Me. And she's here alongside NBC News medical contributor Dr. Natalie Azar.
Hello,
Hi.
ladies. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Since 7 years old, right?
Yes.
And you must have thought you were going crazy because you were tested how many times and they couldn't find out what it was?
Oh, I can't even count. And I had multiple misdiagnoses as well.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things. So you were going through this. What kind of symptoms were you having as you were going through your life?
I started with a lot of joint pain.
In your legs mostly,
yes,
right? Yeah.
Joints and muscles, sore throats and headaches. And then the symptoms sort of died down. And then I had this crazy snowboarding accident in which I dislocated my hip in Austria, which the story is in there quite humorously. Yeah. And it seemed to have possibly flared up symptoms, and it went to cognitive issues. It
Wow.
And cognitively affected me.
I haven't heard of that before.
Yeah, just crippling at that point?
You know, I stopped being able to read sentences, memory. I mean, so many strange things, along with physical symptoms, including nausea.
Still there?
The pain went up so drastically and dramatically that I would cry. And my parents tried to do everything. They brought me to so many doctors, at Harvard, at Yale. I mean, flew me across the country, put me in baths, gave me massages. I mean, they did everything that they could, and there were no answers.
Dr. Azar, how common is this that you can go years and years and this thing not get diagnosed?
Well, I think there's two reasons why. One, I think Lyme is actually called the Great Masquerader because symptoms of Lyme disease can mimic so many others: multiple sclerosis, fibromyalgia, a ton of different autoimmune diseases, Crohn's, lupus, you name it. And as we were talking about before this segment, the sensitivity of the testing is not that great. What does the sensitivity mean? It's actually picking up the number of true positives. All that says is there are a significant proportion of patients who are going to test negative when they do the blood test, which is currently the approved protocol, and actually have the disease. And so if you hang your hat on that, you're going to tell people they don't have the disease. Yeah.
But it's not a case of just getting a second opinion because it could be multiple times.
Exactly.
Right.
And I think the question, what I find so fascinating, and I can't wait to hear about what finally happened when you were diagnosed and how you were then treated, is that so you have these repeatedly negative tests. So I can understand why healthcare professionals will be reluctant to treat empirically. Let's say, okay, let's just give you a month of this antibiotic or whatnot, because if it's not it, of course you can have side effects from the treatment.
Right.
Yeah. So, Allie, people must have thought it was in your head. I mean, nothing was working. But when did they finally diagnose it?
The interesting thing was that some of the tests were "quote unquote" borderline, or a little bit
equivocal, right? Hard to
exactly.
interpret.
And so, when I finally got diagnosed when I was 19 years old, I was so relieved because
it had a name.
It had a name.
Yeah.
I knew the doctors knew. I knew that I was not, clinically, psychologically ill. I knew that, but I knew that I had had a very scary breakdown.
In fact, you were institutionalized.
I was, and that was my worst nightmare.
Wow.
It was really scary.
But so what kind of treatment did they give you afterwards, Allie?
Well, at first I went on a long course of antibiotics, which flared up the symptoms, which is called a Herxheimer. And that was months of excruciating pain and flu-like symptoms, being in bed, and then I would feel better. And then I would go back to work and, run a company or style people or whatever and get really sick again. And this merry-go-round went on for about 7 years. Antibiotics intravenously, orally. Then I thought, if this is going to be my life, like I can't do this. And my dad said homeopathy. So we turned to homeopathy and clean diet and a healthy lifestyle, a low amount of stress, which is almost impossible. And I moved to California, and I'm a lot healthier. No, but life is still life.
What I was going to say is what's so interesting about what Allie experienced was that she kind of had to battle both challenges in Lyme disease. One is getting the treatment, and then the second is having been appropriately treated and then suffering from something that we call post-treatment Lyme disease syndrome, which is a huge other topic and controversial because we don't necessarily recommend repeated courses of antibiotics. And, obviously what you did helped you.
Right. Well, you can read all about it.
It's riveting, and we're glad you're doing so well.
Thank you
Say hello
so
to your
much.
dad.
Thanks for coming to see us, Allie.